In this video, we are going to be talking about the cost to drive 1 mile. And we'll be using my 1999 Toyota 4Runner as a baseline. Now, we are going to be using 8 consumable or wearable parts and fluids, some of which you can see behind me. I'm going to be ranking them from the cheapest all the way up to the most expensive. Now, number 1 is going to be your belts. Now, this is just a belt that you wear for your pants. Didn't have one readily available. I change my belts out every 90,000 miles. Cost me about $100 depending on what kind of belts you get, but that's going to end up being about 1/10 of 1 penny per mile. Similarly, we are going to have our transmission fluid. This is going to be changed out roughly every 80,000 miles. Costs about $70, $80, again, depending on the fluid that you use. I have some synthetic ATF Mobil 1 fluid behind me here, and it's going to cost me about 1/10 of 1 penny per mile. Now, if you are hauling or towing or even drag racing, which I never do in my 4Runner because I would get absolutely smoked, you might need to change it out a little bit more frequent. Next up, similar to the trans fluid, is going to be your diff fluid. Now, my 4Runner is 2-wheel drive, but if you had a 4-wheel drive vehicle, you might swap it out a little bit more frequent. Again, if you're doing any heavy hauling, you might need to change this fluid out more frequently. Mine is about $50, and I do it roughly every 50,000 miles, so that's going to be 1/10 of 1 penny per mile. Next up, in double the cost per mile, is going to be coolant. I get Toyota coolant, costs me about $48 to do the entire flush. Again, some people may never do this maintenance work. I do it every 30,000 miles or so, so it's going to be 2/10 of 1 penny per mile. Next up, and I actually found this one pretty interesting, is going to be your oil. Now, I do my own oil changes, and I do it with 5W30 synthetic oil, and I also buy Toyota filters straight from the dealership. So it costs me about $40 to do an oil change, maybe a little bit more, and I do it once every 5,000 miles. So some quick math there is only 8/10 of 1 penny per mile. So doing those regular oil changes is actually really beneficial for your engine in the long term, and it doesn't cost that much money. Now, moving away from some of the fluids, we're going to transition to wheels and tires. Next expense is going to be an alignment. You typically need to get your tires aligned once every 10,000 miles, and a shop is going to charge you probably about $100. That's going to be 1 penny per mile. This is going to help to keep those tires true and straight and not wear uneven. Following the alignment is going to be the tires themselves. Typically, this is going to be a big expense that you have once every few years, but when you look at the day-to-day, it really isn't that costly. My tires were $1,200. They're going to last me about 60,000 miles. So that's going to be 2 pennies per mile. And now I do realize if you're going to be driving a Corolla, your tires are probably going to be a bit cheaper because the tire, the material, is not as much. So I think the tires on my wife's Corolla were only around $400 to $500. It's just a fraction of the cost, but again, you're paying for less material. So now, the most expensive, the 8th component in this calculation, and you can see it behind me, is going to be gasoline. Now, in 2024, the average price per gallon is about $3.50 in the United States. My 4Runner gets 20 miles to the gallon. I have a very soft foot. Like I mentioned, we're not drag racing anybody. So if you do a quick calculation there, it's going to be about 17.5 cents per mile. Now, if we add all of that up, what you are going to find is that the cost per mile for my 99 Toyota 4Runner is going to be roughly 22 cents, which is a little bit cheaper than what I had thought. Now, keep in mind there are some other components and costs that we are not factoring in here, like insurance, your alternator, or a battery. Those are all also components that you are going to change out, so the number might be a little bit more inflated. This is probably the lowest cost that you're going to experience per mile. And now, just as a comparison, the US government says that you need to pay, if it is a business expense, 67 cents per mile. So I'm sure that they have a lot more factors that go into their calculation than my 22 cents. But as another way to gauge it, 67 cents per mile is what the US government deems as a comparable rate. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and maybe next time when you're going to the gas station just a mile down the road, you might think twice about the additional 44 cents that you're going to incur with your round trip drive, and you might just take the good old-fashioned socks and shoes. With that, I'll catch you in the next one.